Hello, selectors, and welcome back to the Lifers Podcast. I'm Andrew, and we're talking about the new centers from Fisone Diva. And I've got an Urith here, and I think Urith is kind of cool. So here's the thing, right? Like, I do look often at the Japanese lists before I build my list. Normally, I take a look at all of the cards in a new set. I kind of think of my own gut response first, then I look at what the Japanese have done with it, so that way I can have a little bit of a foresight into what should be going on. And I will say that Urith is not really played very much in the Japanese deck lists. So they had some interesting thoughts in there. It was all mostly good stuff, and I think that's probably a fair point to go with it. But the more and more I looked at it, and the more and more I tried to think about what makes Urith interesting to me, and that's sort of where I'm at it as a deck builder now, is there's so many Sender Elrigs out now that like hundreds, right, at this point, that like if it doesn't do something interesting that pulls it away from the rest of the pack, I'm not super interested in it. This one I think does actually do one thing specifically that is pretty interesting, that is different than the other ones. Now, of course, it's a Fisone Elrig. It does all the Fisone things that we talked about. You can watch the last videos if you want in order to get a more deep dive into the spells that you can get. But the important thing to know is that Fisone helps you get a really customizable burst of power, specifically tailored to whatever your opponent, whatever you're playing against at the time. And then the Elrig becomes a little lackluster as time goes on. So that puts two things in mind. One, it means that you've got a good early game, and then two, you want to end the game somewhat soon. I kept thinking over and over and over again, what is unique about Urith? Because the more I looked at it, the more I was like, it's just really bad lane opening, and there's a lot of decks that do good lane opening. So what makes this difference? And then finally, it hit me with a specific lack of words in it, which is this. Outside of the enter, yeah, mills everyone 5. That's cool because then that can give you a little bit of a mill damage angle. Auto once per turn. That's the once per turn part's not the issue. When a Signy on your opponent's field power becomes 0, target a Signy on your opponent's field and it gets negative 5,000 power till end of turn. This has this explicit lack of a couple words, and those couple words is on your turn, which means that this once per turn triggers, yes, every time on your once per turn, and that's something that you're going to be trying to do with this deck, is constantly push it towards that angle. The other thing that it does is it can trigger on your opponent's turn. Now, what does that mean? Well, the first thing I did was try to find any other color other than black as an assist color that does negatives on the opponent's turn. And the answer is there isn't. You're not going to find it. There are ways to potentially put Signy out on the opponent's field, either through bursts or through Elrig effects or through even pieces where you can trigger an enter ability and potentially do it, but none of them are really reliable. Like, they're not that great. So finally I caved, because I really didn't want to do a double color Elrig here, in this case being black, because I wanted to run a Dream Team piece, right? And not running a Dream Team piece is pretty bad, especially since the new piece that's come out, Chaos, is really, really good. But the more I kept thinking about, the more I was like, yeah, this just doesn't work the way that I want it to, unless I have the double black in it. The upside, by the way, before I go too further on, is in the following set, the Blue Archive set, there is going to be a black piece that mills. That's something I was looking for. That also does not say that you need to have 3 different color Elrigs on your field. Because of that, I think the next step after this set would be to do that. So this is sort of a stopgap. I think you change out the main deck to be Blue Archive Signy, and you do the negative stuff. But you probably keep the Elric deck the same, with the exception of swapping out the piece. So that's pretty cool. She also mills. I think that's cool. And the Fasone crafts magic spells we talked about before are good. So what I decided to go with, and inevitably, was Machina Smash, right? Like, the idea of Machina Smash just gives you the most bang for your buck. I know it's tried and true, but being able to go very quickly into -12 that thing, -5 that thing, I think is pretty important. However, this deck also kind of does want its 3-3-1 splits, which means that we're gonna do the unthinkable again. We're gonna go with a double one stop. Double one stops are fine, but when you think about it, right? And give me the benefit of the doubt here. Machina Smash, if you wait for it on turn 3 or turn 4, becomes a 2-stop. Not only can you stop a level 1, you can also stop a level 3, right, with it. So with that in mind, it's suddenly not unreasonable what I'm doing here. It's got a 1-stop and a 2-stop, right? Like, yeah, would you prefer that last one be a 3-stop? Sure, but 2 stops have their place in Wixoss. I decided to go with sort of like this bruiser blue-black deck that I think is kind of fits in with what we're doing already. I already know that with Urith, I need to mill 10, right? There's the mill 5 here, but I also need to mill 10 or 9, I guess, to hit the required number of milling out an opponent in a timely manner. So what we're going to end up doing is Death Deck, right? Like, that's the solution. Not since Urith mills you 5 as well. Getting to the required 20 Signy in your trash, there's Kacharo in here as well that's kind of helping the self-mill package, is not impossible. This Elrig deck also isn't that high, surprisingly, on enter costs. So normally I try to end up in the 9 enter range currently in Wixoss. I think that's what's affordable. You get 3. You have to pay 3 enter from your Urith. Let's ignore enter costs from any of the Fasone spells, because yes, I think you use enter sometimes. The truth is, you're probably going to use the free ones more often than not. Dub is going to cost you 1 enter because you're probably going to make the opponent discard a card. We'll talk about why I added discard package in there in a second. And then Smash is going to cost 2 enter. So altogether, that's 3, 4, 5, and then this has the hefty cost in it, right? You've got to figure out ways to subtract from your Elrig deck if you're going to have heavier piece costs. This is 3 enter, so we've got 5, 6, 7, 8, right? That gets me to the amount that I want to be at. Of course, we got unknown memory here. Unknown memory is free. Theoretically, you can go enter negative with unknown memory. We're gonna ignore that for a second. I don't love making those calculations unless they're like, if they're options, I don't like counting them because you're gonna choose other things sometimes too. So that puts us at 8. That's actually where we want to be at. We've got a 2-stop, cool. We've got access to cards in hand now because of Machina Smash, and I do have plenty of colors here to choose from, so I couldn't do something like a Toko or an Anj. I did consider it. And then the dub, I think, helps us put our discard package on the map, right? Now, you might be thinking, Andrew, you love discard. your non-Beno has Denun Benu. I'm not gonna say it. Has discard. This has discard. Yeah, if you haven't watched the Alos video yet, spoilers. It has discard. Are you just all about discard lately? You played Miko Miko. Maybe that's why you're all about it. No. There's a solid reasoning here, which is this basically. I'm always going to want the -5,000 for this effect to hit, which means that I need to force my opponent to play level 1s. If it's a 3-3-1 split, that's fine. Okay. If it's a 3-2-1 split, that's better for me, because then I can kill the level 2 easier, and then this will hit a level 1. If it's a 3-1-1 split, that's even better, right? I can kill that level 1 to get an extra level 1 kill for free. Basically, you need to ensure that you get that -5,000 off. So how do you do that, right? You could play maybe... The only other thing I can think of is playing something like Sachet Undulation to lower the level a limit of my opponent, and then cool, that gets me there. But there's a tried and true way to do it, and the tried and true way is just limit your opponent's options, right? If you make them discard, and that's a main deck supportable thing, so it frees up my Elrig slots, that is a good way to ensure that they have lower level Signy on the field that you're always hitting with that negative 5,000 once you kill the big thing, right? So now that we know our lower level is going to be taken care of by this, and we're going to ensure that a lower level is on the field by doing discard, right? That does mean that we need to put discard in the main deck to fill it out. Blue's good at that, so that's not that big of a deal. It also means that secondarily, we need to find ways to get that negative effect to bring some power down to 0 for Urith to trigger. Yeah, there's a lot of ways at black that we can do that pretty easily with just like killing small things, but we also need to kill big things. Luckily, Death Deck will handle at least one big thing for us. Negative 12k is a real number that will do something. Yes, we'll also hit with Machina Smash. That's during the opponent's turn, though, so we're going to try to find ways to trigger it a little bit, too. We've also got the Fasona spell of negative 8k with the black one, so that's also going to kind of help us a little bit here. But it does mean that we need to try to hit big stuff as well. Well, there's 2 cards off the top of my head that do that as I want pretty well. The first one's Anna Mirage. Negative 8,000. It's also got a life burst, right? That's going to be something we're looking to do. And the second one is a new card coming out, which is the Nanashi Fasone Natural Bacteria Queen. This has the auto at the beginning of the turn. If this Signy is awakened, which you're just down 2 Elrigs to do, then you can give something on your opponent's field negative 8,000 till end of turn, right? It's got coin costs. We're not using the coins. Why is this the best we can do? Well, the only higher that we can do than this with a level 3 Signy is by doing either Desona and running Umir, which is a possibility, but not one that I really was thinking about exploring at this point because I needed the discard package, and I think the discard package, the supplement discard package, is better outside of Desona than it is in Desona. In Desona, I think you need to run like primarily blue to get the discard working, and I don't think it supplements a blue-black very easily, except for Nanashi. The other way of doing it is Werewolf. Werewolf is true. There's ways to get Werewolf to go off, but I think they're more effort than what they're worth in most of these decks. So I didn't put a Werewolf in it. So 8,000 is the best that I could do. I think there's enough ways to do 8,000 plus a 3k with like an Oigona or something here that you're going to be pretty well off with. Like I said, I've got Oigona here, right? We're just going to talk about our negative effects here. That's going to help us get there. Another way is ZR. ZR actually is a negative effect as well. Negative 8k is good. I mean, it adds to our list of negative 8ks. Weird that it's in blue rather than black, but you know, you take it. Plus supplements our discard. We also are a little hand hungry in this deck, but luckily both our pieces give us cards in hand. Both our Elrigs give us cards in hand, like all of it. So we should theoretically be cycling our deck pretty often. Another way to cycle our deck that I'm bringing back from Blast from the Past here is Bruno. I actually really like Bruno a lot. I miss it quite a bit playing the Desona Signy. Then to fill out our discard package, Monomins help us out, as well as Random Drains help us out. They'll get us to where we need to go. This is what I like about this deck. So now we also need to finish the negative package. Kacharu, surprise, surprise, you don't actually need Desona for this to work. It just is a Desona on its own, which is quite cool. And then to help supplement our hand discard, I added Right a little bit in there because you can pay an enter instead, and it's got a life burst. We needed to fill out black. We need to fill out black costs and white and level 1 costs. So I ended up going with that. What do we fill the holes in with? Like, once we have this, I actually think it's a quite strong core of the deck, but there's still a few more things that we can do to push it over the edge, right? Like to fill out those holes and to get us up to 40. I love it when I look at a deck and I have been like, man, this deck is really strong. Oh, I have 10 more cards I can fill out. Great, right? That's kind of how I felt while building this deck, so I think it's actually quite strong. I put Maho's in here as just a 2-of. This just helps supplement discard or mill out. I don't know why your opponent wouldn't be milled out by, you know, the other stuff that you're doing. It's a level 1. It mills out. I'm happy to have it. It's a Dishonor, but it doesn't actually need to have any Dishonours on the field. And then Honials, again, I wanted access to more cards at the cost of Enter in case we were getting Enter flooded, right? Like our opponent's really attacking us down, really killing our Signy, not really Enter starving us at all. Cool, we should have 6 for those. So this is a sync that helps us get out of it. Plus everyone knows Honial's my favorite card. And then at the end I put a Typhon in here. I really, really, really wish I had the ability to put the Reticle Digger spell in this, but you can't exceed, really. Like, you've got to use exceed 4 for your main Elrig deck. So this is just something that fills out at 12k or 15k. Is not terrible. Blast from the past here, so I'll take it. And then the last thing I filled it out was 4 Exias and a Penlight. So it's kind of interesting. I think you probably could go up to 2 Penlight, 3 Exia if you wanted to. I ended up going 3 Exia. Again, I'm always a little worried about my defenses when I play a double 1-stop. I know, generally speaking, the Machina Smash should be a 2-stop, but I fill it out as I see it, and this is, I think, a good way to fill it out. Penlight's an interesting one because you always have access to spells, and I don't love Penlight. Like, I'm not Enter starving my opponent here, so the Enter cost is just kind of a bump in the road for it. Really what it is also gets Shadow Signy is kind of cool. So I think it's a fine thing to fill out your life bursts with, but it's not something I'd write home about. Overall, I'm actually very impressed with the way that this Urith deck came out. Highly suggest you guys try it out and let me know what you guys think. I think it's pretty flexible, and I think it takes a little bit of brain power to play the deck, because you do need to make sure that you use your Fasona spells correctly throughout the course of the game. The power is really going to come from that. Outside of that, it's going to get your opponents unexpected sometimes, and I think if I was going to play an Urith deck, because I know there's a lot of Urith stands out there, this is definitely the Urith deck I'd be playing over the other options that are currently available. So let me know what you guys think.